Rob, I loved your book. And I think the thing that is so striking about it right away is it doesn't spare you anything. It's intense and funny and wry and throat punchy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just wondered right away if it seems like you're already practiced in unvarnished truth telling. So I wondered if before all of this happened, were you like that?
To a degree, I was. I just figured my boy Henry died right before he turned 3. So we knew him. He wasn't a tiny little baby. He was a person with thoughts, feelings, opinions, tastes,
Yeah.
idiosyncrasies. And so when we knew he was going to die, and then when he did die, we were just destroyed.
Yeah.
And I thought the best thing that I could do for people who haven't experienced this is not try to protect them from it, which is a very powerful impulse. You want to protect people from your crazy story sometimes, or ease them into it. And I thought I just had developed, I guess, enough of storytelling instincts from the other stuff that I've done that I was like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't. And maybe I shouldn't worry about anybody else when I write this. But I was conscious at the same time that if I don't do that, it'll probably be the better book.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted it to be a disaster, and I wanted it to hurt. Because if you read this book before something incredibly terrible happened to you, you might be in better shape than if you read something that was like, here are 3 mantras that you can do just even in your car before you unbuckle your seatbelt or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you gave people something real, then they could hang their hat on it,
That's right.
And then for people who had been through it, I figured it would be like getting into the Aegean Sea, at sunset. So that was the goal, to give them something they recognized and said, yep, that's what this is. And then for people who hadn't been through it to be like, why did you do that to me with your book, you monster? And have me say, yes, correct.
I found that so refreshing because something someone said to me recently, I was having really debilitating pain and I didn't want to finish that part of the story because I just thought, because I can keep my voice up here and look how great it is when I keep my voice up here.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, you clean up quick.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no, I think that is why it's been, it is practiced now for me just even to let people feel the weight of the thing I want to tell them. Because it is hard to say, like, right now I need this to hurt.
Yeah.
When I tell you I want it to land.
And the weird part is that if they take it and hear it, and they might not even have to say anything, but if they sit there and they keep eye contact with you and they don't hold their breath and let it in, then you can move through it. And then you can talk about what to order for dinner or whatever. But if they don't and they close off and they don't want to hear it, then there's going to be discomfort there that's going to sour the rest of your interaction. Because it's almost like somebody threw a handful of paint at the wall. Yeah. Your story with cancer or death or both. And then they're like, we shan't look at it. Come on, there's a big crazy orange star pattern dripping, coagulating on the wall. Let's acknowledge it, and then we can do our thing. But if you don't acknowledge it, then you go crazy.
Yes, that's exactly right. You can tell when someone's scared of you. Mm-hmm. You can tell when someone's like, I'm going to keep a really tight script right now, or else we might fall off the edge and talk about something real. Mm-hmm. And then there's times I think I just don't know how to manage the children's birthday parties. I feel a part of something growing inside of me where I want so much to answer everyone's questions they didn't ask. And I'm like, why do I need to do this here?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
All of a sudden.
I have almost a hobby because you mentioned children's birthday parties. I love it when a child will hear that Henry died and then ask me about it. And this has happened more than a couple times where their parents' radar will go up but unfortunately, they're about 15 feet away. And in the time it'll take them to cover that distance to prevent their child from hearing about death, I've already told the story to their little child, and they know that my child died. And then they have that knowledge, and their shitty parent can do nothing about it. And I've given them a gift because that child can handle it. They can handle it like nobody's business. Yeah. It's that friggin' brittle adult who thought, oh, I can control what type of, truth reaches my child. Well, you didn't count on me coming to the party, did you?
There are moments that feel intolerable, I think, once you know things. Like your description of needing to not pretend anymore that an old person passing away is the same thing.
Right.
Like playing the game, everything's the same because everyone wants a moment to relate. And like, yes, we all have this deep desire to say, me too.
Yeah.
And yet things are not the same. And being able to parse those differences is sanity.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. Like Tina Turner died. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, she made it to 83. How amazing. And now I'm reminded to listen to Tina Turner. Yeah, amazing. And when I heard people being like, oh my God, Tina Turner has passed away. And I was like, yeah, at 83, after climbing the musical equivalent of a variety of Everests, like why are you not dancing, Yeah. And so that's always strange to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but for me, it's a whole different bag.
Yeah.
Or I mentioned to you, my dad died 3 days after A Heart That Works came out. And that's my dad. And he was 74. I'd like to live longer than 74, but I'd rather live to 74 than not quite 3 like Henry did, right? Yeah. And also, I didn't want to be like the guy who, if I love you, you die. You know what I mean? So I've kind of been like, I think I did on Morning Joe. They were like, and your dad, how's your dad on live morning TV? And I was like, I hate to tell you this on live TV, but he did sort of die.
Sort of is the most.
He's mostly deceased. And I can talk. Look, I wish he wasn't dead. I love him so much. And he took such good care of Henry. Oh my God. And also the 1-2 punch of having the book come out and then my sweet dad die. My dad, Bob, after whom I'm named and who I look like, and who took such beautiful care of my son. He died. And
he got the training. I mean,
he did.
All the little
he's so
tubes
amazing
and processes.
I know. And now, I love that people can read the book and get to know him. But the reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because it's like Henry's death and the grief for that is like Jupiter, right? So your son dies of cancer, and that's, you barely survive that, Yeah. And then my dad dying is like, I don't know, Neptune, or maybe Earth. Let's go. So it's still a celestial body that would take you forever to circumnavigate, but it isn't as big as the Titan. But it's like the Earth of my grief for my dad is like on the other side of the Jupiter.
Yeah.
So I'm like with Henry. So I'm having to really consciously talk to myself about my dad, like out loud, and talk to him and think about it. Cause you got to grieve your dad, but it's like the fact that he died at 74, it just fundamentally isn't as anywhere near as devastating as your 2-year-old son dying, So it's been really weird. And so, I guess I just wanted to say that to you, that I'm like trying to like force myself to not as necessarily have certain feelings, but allow him to like be close to me.
Yeah.
And in my thoughts and in my heart. Cause like in terms of mental, emotional hygiene, you better grieve your parent regardless of the type of relationship that you had. And we had a good one.
Yeah.
So but that's just a weird thing happening.
Well, the affront of it, I mean, I have a friend who wrote a gorgeous book about the death of her child, and she talks about like the affront of the out of orderedness.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's grief that knows how to follow like an A to B and B to C and C to D. And then when there's no discernible alphabet.
I think I said that grandparent and pet deaths are like warm-up deaths for when you get like hit really hard. Those are like, oh, little training wheels. Oh, did Grampy die? Your grandpa did you love? Did he die? You're not going to come back? You're not coming to Christmas? Because he's dead? I'm so sorry. People like raised by their grandparents are calling and being like, you son of a bitch. And please understand, I don't care.
There is something that goes to this. It's funny that like, I mean, because there's no justice to the way tragedy visits us. I think there's a bit in there, at least in my experience, where there's a part in which I want an understanding of what it cost before I'm even like, that's the price of admission for just understanding. Like, when I got sick, I had a little baby and I would have to kiss him on his soft little fuzzy head before going to chemo every time. And every time I found that it was just so surreal to toggle between like, you know, the kingdom of the living and then the kingdom of the sick. But because I had to live there in my little, because you can't create a bubble around your loves. I don't know. There's something about all the medical stuff where you can't really protect everyone from knowing, even if you wish you could take a break from it. So all your description of like the intimacy of caregiving and the privilege and the burden of it was really beautiful to me.
I miss it so much. I want to do it all. When I think about him, I don't think about him like pre-surgery, pre-disability. Yeah. Like I want him back with his horrible tracheostomy, which allowed him to breathe. Yeah. So I also loved it. I wish I was sleep deprived because I was sleeping on the floor of his room, listening to his breathing and his machines and stuff. And I wish I was changing his tubes and, you know, dealing with the weird, like there's like permanent infections you can get. Like if you have stoma, like holes that aren't natural in your body, there are bacterias and stuff that can come and live there and you kind of can't get rid of them. So you have to, you know, I want to be doing all that because you learn all that stuff and now I can't do it. Now I'm like, whenever I hear like a car crash, I'm not like, oh, scary. I'm like, ooh, I hope I can help someone. I hope, you know, I was on a plane not too long ago and they were like, is there a doctor on board? And I went up to the flight attendant and was like, I'm not a doctor, but like if there's blood, I don't care. Look how big I am. I can lift your biggest passenger. Like use me. And they were like, all right, weirdo. You know? I mean, that was like in the first year after Henry's death, but I'm constantly like, if I weren't exactly as busy I am with a career that I'm really lucky to love, I would absolutely be like a part-time, overqualified paramedic.
You describe a feeling that I'd not ever heard anyone say about suffering, the aftermath of suffering, was you were like, I don't know how to describe it. It's this, like you know how to dig in really fast. Like there's something about like a long-term relationship with fear and then having and being like, I love you. I am rising to this. That you're like, I have a higher pain threshold. Because I have this feeling like I could kill a man.
Yeah, sure.
You know, because I do now have a really, really high pain threshold. Even though there's so much Little House on the Prairie content here, I have like a murderous ability to manage impossible situations and get it done. Like I would happily volunteer to perform field medicine. And then
when I hear like, well, what if you died in the emergency scenario? I'm like, well, then I'd be dead. Yeah. Like that doesn't even faze me. Yeah. You know, I'm like, well, you might die. I mean, I'm not saying you're not going to die. Or like when I hear about a problem out in the world, I'm like, well, okay, yeah, sure. So totally people died, but also things will, you know, life will continue. So it's so weird what happens to your kind of
frame of reference,
emotional triage and everything, you're like, well, okay, how do we get through this?
I do feel that way when I meet people that you see it in behind their eyes. And you're like, oh, you and you and you.
Yeah.
And we have been handed a passport. And I like being around those people. Yeah. I seek it out. And sometimes that's the only thing that makes me relax.
Yeah. Yeah, I love hanging out with my fellow bereaved parents so much. I'm always calling, texting, hanging out with my bereaved parent friends because we can just chill around each other and get it. It's just easier.